Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Sorry, it is just me and not Carol Baskin today, but we will have another guest uh, speaker giving you your agenda next week. Otherwise, you just get me, so sorry. But I'm going to go over Chapter 4 with you. I'm going to try to get your Chapter 4 study guide review and your character chart all in this video, so wish me luck. Okay, you can obviously pause me at any time if I'm going too fast so that you can make sure you get your study guide filled out because you can use your notes from the study guide on your quiz. So first of all, it says, how does Father Kleinsberg feel after going back into the city? He's starting to, at the beginning of the day, he feels really well, but after his walk back to his house, he gets extremely tired. In the days following, he almost faints while he is saying Mass. And people are starting to get worried about him because his cuts are like healing and then they're reopening themselves and becoming like infected looking. Mrs. Nakamura's hair is beginning to fall out, which is another stage of sickness due to the bomb. She's almost bald from this, and it's very embarrassing to her. Miss Sasaki gets the creeps because she is traveling through the city and she sees that the city is now covered with like lush green grass and plant life, and like flowers and grass and things are growing out of debris of houses and in places that it wasn't even before. And not only is this grass and plant life growing back, but it's growing back even lusher than what it was before the bomb. So it was almost like the bomb fed this. Pediche, they're like hemorrhages or like bumps or growths. You might think it's like a rash, but they like stick up above the skin. And this is something that would happen to a lot of people. They would develop this sort of hemorrhage rash. And these pediche were about the size of little grains of rice that would cover a certain, portion of your skin. Dr. Fuji is he was staying at a friend's house, and he found that at one point this house had been washed away. So that was very sad. You can read that summary of 72 and 73. Mrs. Nakamura went back to get her sewing machine. She found that it was in the water tank where she had left it, unharmed by the fires, although it was rusted and useless because she put it in a water tank. What do the doctors in Tokyo say about Father Kleinsberg's condition? So to Father Kleinsberg's face, they tell him that he's going to be just fine. But then they leave the room and they're talking outside in the hallway, and Father Kleinsberg can hear them, but the doctors don't know Father Kleinsberg can hear them. So they start saying, Father Kleinsberg, he's going to die. All these bomb people die. Just wait, you'll see. They all die. So Father Kleinsberg is hearing this. So obviously that crushes his spirits. Tanimoto treats his fever with like ancient herbal remedies. They burn like these herbs and they place them on their wrists where your veins are on your wrists, and that's supposed to help your fever. So that's what he was doing because he didn't have medicine. So there's 3 stages of this radiation sickness that these people experienced after the bomb, and it's important to know the stages of these diseases of this disease because all the characters kind of go through this. So the first stage killed 95% of people within a half mile of the center of the explosion, and we kind of talked about this in class when we talked about the nuke map that we did. But basically, your body cannot absorb that amount of radiation so quickly. And so it would just kill all of your blood cells and you would end up dying from this. Those that didn't die, terrible nausea, headache, fever, diarrhea, they were tired all the time, exhausted. In stage 2, which occurred 10 to 15 days after the bombing, your hair would fall out, you'd get this really high fever, your gums would bleed, just crazy stuff would happen. Your white blood cells would be killed, and your white blood cells help you fight off infection. So oftentimes people would die in this stage. In the third stage, your body is overcompensating for its ills, so your blood cell count would rise and drop drastically and very quickly, which would cause you to be really sick. And a lot of people died in the third stage as well. Dr. Fuji hangs a sign above his clinic in English this time. He says it's to honor the conquerors, which are the American people of World War or of this war with Japan. What begins to happen to Miss Sasaki's leg is unbearably painful, and she starts noticing that the brakes, because the brakes aren't set in her leg, because no one ever set them, her leg is actually a few inches shorter than her healthy leg. So that's, she doesn't enjoy that at all. Her fiance is really sad. Her fiance like hears that she was grossly wounded with her injuries, and he never comes to find her or to see if she is okay. She just never hears from him again. So he like ghosted his fiance. That's crazy. Uh, what does Dr. Fuji say about Father Kleinsorg's prescription to be cautious? So, um, he says it's hard to be cautious in Hiroshima these days because everyone seems so busy. And by cautious, they mean just take it easy sort of thing. And he's like, it's hard to take it easy. But we have a lot of stuff to do right now. Don't we all always, right? This summary of page 80 to 83 is important because there's a lot of interesting facts in here. Actually, chapter 4 is really interesting because it just talks about like the effects of the bomb, which is really interesting because, again, if this is used in warfare today, these are things we have to take into consideration. So, first of all, where it says statisticians publish numbers that 78,000 people were killed, about 14,000 went missing, and about 37,000 were injured. Okay, well, if you just average these, this is where they get the 100,000 people were killed, because this number right here, the 14,000 that are missing, are most likely dead. Many of them, they probably never found remains, they probably disintegrated. So they're saying 100,000 people died, close to 40,000 are injured, and that's how they speculate that 100,000 people were killed. 25% died from direct burns from the bomb, 50% from other injuries, and 25% from radiation effects. 75% of the city's buildings were damaged beyond repair. Okay, this is where you also need to pay attention because they have found that the air temperature reached 10,832 degrees Fahrenheit. In the book, it gives you Celsius degrees. It says 6,000 degrees Celsius, which translates to 10,832 degrees Fahrenheit. Which this measurement of temperature is inconceivable because the surface of the sun is 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So this bomb was actually hotter than the surface of the sun. It was like worse than us dropping the sun on Japan, which is like unfathomable. And now obviously we know that we can make bombs even more powerful than this. So just like a crazy statistic, and you're going to need to know that for the quiz. How does Father Kleinsorg react to Miss Sasaki's claims about God? She is, obviously very upset about what's happening to her, and she's disappointed, and she's going on about like, how could God let this happen? If there's a God, like, why would this be happening? Which I could imagine a lot of people going there. Father Kleinsorg basically says, God, the world is not in the state that God intended the world to be. Man has fallen from grace because of sin, because of his free will and choices to do. And he must have explained himself pretty well, because if we're going to skip down to number 20, it says, what does Miss Sasaki do when she gets out of the hospital? She converts to Catholicism. So just wait until chapter 5 and see what Miss Sasaki does. Anyway, Mrs. Nakamura's home and possessions, she's destitute. She has nothing. She's poor. And she's got 3 kids. So she's in a really rough spot. Mr. Tanimoto says his energy level is not what it had once been, and he struggles with that. And then the Jesuits decide that they are going to rebuild their home exactly as it was before the bomb. So that is what they're trying to do. Your character chart, I'm not going to pull that up because chapter 4 actually gives you your character chart. Obviously, I have the book here. Oh shoot, let me find it. Okay, so on page 87 of your book at the top, oh, I'm acting like that is helpful to you. Holding up the book is not helpful to you. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, um, you can pause this as you're filling out your character chart, but it says right here, a year after the bomb, which is the end of chapter 4, is a year after the bomb. Mrs. Saki was a cripple. Mrs. Nakamura was destitute, meaning she was poor, she had nothing. Father Kleinsborg was back in the hospital. He kept going in and out of hospitals. Dr. Sasaki was not capable of the work he could once do. Dr. Fuji had lost the 30-room hospital it took him many years to acquire, and he had no prospects of rebuilding it. And Mr. Tanimoto's church had been ruined, and he no longer had his exceptional attitude. So that's where, the end of chapter 4, you have to remember, was the end of the book. The first time the book was published, like this was it. This was the end. This is where we ended the book, right? John Hersey went back to America, lived his life for 40 years, and then he goes back and writes chapter 5, which is why chapter 5 is so long. And so at the beginning, this is where it ended, okay? But we know that that's actually not where it ends. So that's why we still have chapter 5. But first, you have to take your chapter 4 quiz. So when you're done with this video and you're confident in your notes and you're confident in your study guide, use your study guide, use your notes to take your chapter 4 quiz. Make sure that you look over, especially like this section right here, there's going to be questions about these statistics in this section. So write some of these things down so that you have it handy, so that, obviously you don't need the full time or you don't run out of time on your quiz, right? So anyway, I'll leave it here, and obviously go back and rewatch whatever you need to, or pause wherever you need to pause, so that you have what you need. Okay, that didn't take 15 minutes, so that's great. All right, have a great day, guys.